Well, hi guys. I'm Mike Miller, along with Bob Paradise, owner of Attain Technology. Today we're going to talk about adding cybersecurity to your construction prequals. And I know it's a new idea. It's because Bob recognized the need for it, and he's now trying to bring awareness to this issue. We're going to cover the need for adding cybersecurity to your prequals and why it's so important, especially today. So, Bob, the question is, what's happening in the current cybersecurity landscape that would prompt adding cybersecurity to your construction prequals?
Thank you, Michael. Hello, everyone. I just wanted to say hi before we get started.
Yeah.
So construction prequals, and everybody's probably wondering, prequals have been the same since the start of man. Safety, financial, all of things that would qualify a company to run a job, right? Well, in today's day and age, we're running into a situation where construction companies and projects can get completely delayed by a subcontractor getting hacked and having ransomware or malware. The industry is not sure what they're doing anymore because it's in a ground that construction companies are just not comfortable with or have never been faced with. Government industry has had regulation for a long time, and financial and doctors and all of those have had regulation, but there is no regulation in construction, so there's no advocacy to make sure that construction companies maintain a good, secure background, and then there's no framework for that, right? So what I realized is that in the construction realm, right, construction companies aren't even looking at this yet, and I think that we need to look at this today. I have a couple of friends, companies that I work with that I'm friends with the CEOs, and the CEOs are former CIA analysts, and they're telling me today that it's not if you're going to get hacked, it's when you're going to get hacked. Everybody is going to be hacked at some point in time, and whether it's a major hack or a minor hack really depends on you and what you do, right? So let's talk about construction and construction prequals. Really, the whole purpose of this is to make sure that the subcontractors and the general contractors set some standards for their companies, right? So you're a general contractor. We want you to set a standard for your companies. We want you to set a standard for your subs. And why we're setting those standards is really like, we're not going to make you hack-proof through these standards. That's just not going to happen. Government can't do it. Private industry can't do it. It's just not going to happen. But what we can do is let's say you're an apple tree, right? You're an apple on an apple tree. We can either make you the low-hanging fruit, so you're the first one picked, right? The no security companies, the companies that really don't pay any attention, don't have a cybersecurity culture, they get picked and they get eaten, 30 seconds into the crowds getting released to pick apples, right? Really what we want to do is make sure you're on the top of that apple tree. To make sure that it's the farmer picking you, they got to go to a special ladder and climb the tree and have some skill to pick those apples to get them down so they go into the premium pie, right? Because really hackers are the same thing, right? So hackers have skill levels, just like in any industry, right? And the really low skill levels are picking off the bottom of the tree. So let's say I scan the whole internet, right, using bots, and I find companies that have insecure systems, and I target them, and then I infect them, and then since I don't have any more skill, I just sell that off to somebody else, and then they can hack you. So my goal is to get you on top of that tree, and there's no way to get you on top of the tree without doing some things, and that's why I'm saying that we need to have cybersecurity and prequal. So in a recent video I did, I talked about what is the most valuable thing that you can do as a construction company to make sure that your system is secured, so you remove yourself from that low-hanging fruit. And the number one thing that you can do is create a cybersecurity culture with cybersecurity training and testing, because 80% of the hacks in this country are currently coming from end users being socially phished or email phished and allowing them in that way. And once they're in, now they have a foothold, right? And you could already be compromised and not even know it, because the hackers are sitting on there 6 months, a year out. So that what they're trying to do is they're trying to compromise your backups, right? And they know that we're keeping backups for so long. So we're trying to make sure, they're trying to make sure that they can get you to pay the ransom. And then they're also doing another thing. They're going to sell that data off. They're going to threaten to sell that data off. So what are some of the things that we can do to help keep you? First and foremost is annually train your employees on cybersecurity, right? Talk about it all the time in the office. Bring it into your company culture. Talk about cybersecurity, right? Talk about the things that are compromised. Bringing someone to do quarterly training, right? Train your employees, have those conversations. So you have the annual electronic training, for bringing somebody to talk about it and make it personal to them, right? So that's the number one thing that you can do in your organization. But there's other things, right? We're talking about moving up a maturity model like CMMC, right? Government, they implemented the NIST 871 standard, and then they put the CMMC guidelines on top of it because they found that companies found the 871 NIST standard was too complicated. So they introduced the CMMC, which makes it step 1 through 5, makes it easy. So what we got to do is start graduating through that, and that's part of building a cybersecurity culture, right? And how do we get subs to do this? We add it to the pre-quals, and we can set the minimum bar. And the first year is probably going to be pretty low, right? Because we need to get them used to those pre-quals. We can't lose all of our subcontractors in the first year or the first 6 months that we implement pre-quals, but we got to get them in the tune and adjusted to do that. It's sort of like, remember back in the 80s when OSHA started getting really strict on construction companies, we had to ease those things in, right? Because if we just implement them overnight, you're not going to have any subcontractors, nobody's going to qualify, and then you won't be able to do projects. And the whole purpose of this is to get your subcontractors resilient to cyber attacks so your projects continue without interruption.
Okay. Okay.
One of the things we should talk about too is that what kind of impact cybersecurity can have on a construction job, right? So the hackers are infiltrating networks. They're draining the information off the networks, and then when they're ready, they'll ransomware you or create another attack so you don't have access to your systems. Well, if one of your subcontractors doesn't have access to the systems, then they're going to not be able to perform, right? They're going to be distracted. They're going to be focused on their company. They're not going to be focused on your jobs, right? They won't be able to get data to their jobs. They won't be able to access their data to get to the jobs. They won't be able to access their emails. They will be handcuffed. They might be able to still semi-perform, but what is that going to do to your job? If it's a plumber, right, is it going to stop the carpenters behind him? If it's a drywaller, is it going to stop all of the interior finish people, right? Is it going to delay a job? Are you going to have to immediately find someone to supplement that job to get that done? And what is that going to cost, right? And where does that money come from? And then, usually those things end up being a court battle, and are there liquidated damages and all that? And the best thing for a construction company to do is think about this ahead of time. So that's why I am really pressing companies to start thinking about the prequal, adding cybersecurity to the prequal process.
Okay. So you talked about the effects of a cyber attack on a company and how it affects the performance, right? The way the company's performing. And I just wanted to ask, so the CMMC framework, so essentially you're saying, doesn't it start with like multi-factor, like the bare minimums, right? Multi-factor authentication, little things, and it moves up towards more and more complex, like towards penetration testing and all of that?
Yeah, the first round is really identification, right? Getting your subcontractors to look at the networks, getting you to look at your network, and figuring out what we need to do. So the whole first step is assessment, right?
Okay.
And that's actually a plus, because in that assessment, you're going to fix things. Some of those things are going to be easily fixed, and you're going to fix them in 30 seconds, right? Some of those things you're going to need to put on a list to mitigate later. But it's sort of like you don't know what you don't know, and the first step is really to get you to know what you don't know.
Okay. And so, and this is important because if you could basically, if you have cybersecurity for your business, that doesn't necessarily mean that your subcontractors are protected, and then a hacker could infiltrate your business through your subcontractors or suppliers or vendors, right?
It really depends on the setup, and that is possible, right?
Okay.
You receive emails from your subcontractors. Well, if their email is compromised and you're getting emails from them, those are considered trusted emails internally. So you open up a Microsoft Word document from one of the subcontractors that's compromised. Now you have a subcontractor and the general contractor compromised, right? And if it's the same hacker, they're going to simultaneously hit those attacks. They're smart enough to do that. And they're going to probably try to get everybody else on the chain to do the same thing. So how do we get that? How do we do that? We mature the whole organization, contractor and subcontractors, so that it's a one unit, right? And then bringing in going back to cybersecurity culture, if we can build that culture within each of the organizations, the chances get less and less, right? Let's knock off that 80%, make that 80% 20%, right? And then we can hit some of the other things that are the real issues. So.
Right. Okay. And you're talking about the fact that 80% of hacks originate through the end users or the employees, right?
Exactly, Michael.
Okay. Okay. So what is the difference between a prequal for a general contractor or a subcontractor? You know, what would the difference be?
So usually the general contractor will create the prequal, right? So general contractor has the big project. And some owners should probably start thinking about prequaling the general contractors, right? So it's an owner, general contractor, subcontractor. But it's really important for the general contractor to have some good security standards in place, do those assessments and understand where they are, and then apply those rules over time to their subcontractors so their subcontractors become more and more resilient. And that's really the model, right? So owner to general contractor to subcontractor.
Okay. Okay. So what if, I'm a general contractor, what should I be thinking about? What should I be doing to prepare? Because, like, I'm kind of dumb and I got to reinforce it in my head, so I'm thinking, okay, so for a general contractor, he's doing a prequal to make sure that the people he's lined up, like he's got the finances to build this, whatever it is, let's say a bridge, and he's got the subcontractors lined up and they have the finances, they have the manpower, they have the resources, right, to be able to pull off this project on time and on budget, right? So if I'm a general contractor and I'm adding prequal, cybersecurity to my prequals, what am I looking at? What am I looking at adding?
So we're looking at adding several things. First of all, assess some type of assessment, right? Where are we at within some maturity model? I just use CMMC. There's about 17 different maturity models. I use CMMC because it seems to be the one that's going to be adopted across all of them. It's the easiest one to understand. But also, there's talking about maturing through that process. So the first thing is that, do you have next gen antivirus, anti-malware, right? Do you have foothold protection? Do you have foothold protection is where we look for tools that the hackers would use or tactics the hacker would use. And then the system notifies us of that and locks that user out, right? So, or locks that process out or that application out. So we put in these simple tools that are really low, really less expensive, but it's moving you higher up on that tree, right? So each one of these tools, if we use next-gen antivirus, anti-malware, it is so much far smarter than the old style antivirus where you download the definitions, the computer runs the definitions. Now it's all real time. It looks at the hashes, goes up to checks in with the cloud. Oh yeah, I've seen that hash, that's bad, deny it right away. They're picking up, and then there's artificial intelligence involved with that, so that the artificial intelligence would look for a pattern. It sees this pattern, it says, oh, this doesn't look right. Let's stop this until someone can look at that. So we're maturing up that model, right? Then we move on to foothold protection, where there's a 24/7 knock looking at all the things that the hackers might be doing on the network. And then when it sees one of those, it alerts immediately, lets us know, right? And then we have those security professionals in the background to look into that, remediate it, decide if we need to reload the system, what is the compromise, how did they get in, and we button up those holes, right? Well, also, so you take it to the next level, we can move into a zero trust, right? Which is a much bigger project. I mean, and that's gearing on the project 5 of the CMMC, right? Where we look at every application, we only permit certain applications from running on the network, and that if it isn't specifically allowed, it's denied. And we do the same thing with storage. So we specifically allow access to storage. We prevent data escape by USB or other drives. We also secure all the data down the same way. So if a hacker gets on, he has to emulate a user to get that data, because there's no way for him to get the data, because just anonymous can't get the data. We're making it a zero trust. So it goes up. Do I trust you? No. Get the heck out. There's a lot of things. So that's way down the line for some of these subcontractors. And it is an expensive process, right? There's software, there's understanding the networks, and there's something we can do really easily. But to begin with, first we have to do the assessment. Get the assessment done, move to the first stage, put some really good processes in place and some really good tools in place, right? Move on to the second step, the third step. Okay, we mature that a little bit. We add some more processes, we add some more tools, right? And then we work our way through that. Originally, to just get you guys from low hanging fruit on the tree to midway up the tree is really where we want to be. We want to be midway or higher in the tree. To get you there is not a big proposition, right? We're not talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. We're probably looking at, probably depends on the size of the company, probably $10 or $15 per user in the company, right? It's not a very expensive process, right? And then we just graduated from that, right? We understand that every one of these construction companies have very tight margins, and that they really need a good reason to do this. And I'm telling you that construction sites will be delayed in the future by ransomware attacks. Construction is one of the fastest growing technologies in this country. And don't believe me that hackers are not going to ignore one of the fastest growing technology segments in this country.
Right. Yes, exactly. And so just to give a little context, basically what you're saying is hackers are scanning the internet and ports and, probing businesses just at random, looking for the low-hanging fruit.
Actually, it's not even the hackers, Mike. So let me sort of interrupt you. Sorry about doing that. But so the hackers will compromise 50 machines. They'll turn those 50 machines into bots with artificial intelligence. And now those bots start going out and looking for all the telltale signs of a system they could possibly compromise. And that's why I'm saying it doesn't take much to move you to the middle of the tree, because all you need to do is hide from these bots, and you're already a third of the way up the tree, right?
Yes.
So they take those 50 bots, and now they get access. And then the way the cyber criminals are doing this is actually ingenious. So you have different tiers, right? I could be a full-fledged hacker, and I could compromise you and carry out the attack all the way through, right? But that's really not the way it's happening today. What's happening today is that I just compromise people, right? And I have those 50 bots, and they go out and find these networks, and I create the initial compromise. I use a 0-day vulnerability or a known vulnerability. I get into the company, right? I hide my little back doors in your company. And then what I do is I sell that access. I says, I have this company. It's the Petroleum Pipeline Organization, and this is how much I want, and you can have access to it, right?
Wow. Yeah.
Somebody pays me my $10,000 and I go away. I made my $10,000 payday today, right? And the next guy that has more experience would conduct the next part of the hack, right? And they would get the big payday, right? But I'm happy as a pig in, because I got my 10 grand, right? So it's really about taking the hammer and stomping these guys out and taking that access out. One of the hackers called ReEvil, they conducted a hack this year, And they did it exactly the same way. Somebody sold them the access, and then ReEvil carried it out. ReEvil's known, ReEvil makes a kit for people. They hand the people a kit and they say, okay, you get access to a network, you implement these tools, we'll give you this much percentage of the hack. So they get the payday and they get a certain percentage, and there's no risk on it for ReEvil, because unless there's a payday, they don't have to pay, right? It's
Right.
a business. There's buildings in Russia and in India, two countries I know about, and I'm sure Iran and some other countries. There's buildings with floors and floors and floors of hackers doing this stuff. And then there's, not even to count those, but there's thousands and thousands of people at home. So it's really about making sure that we get ourselves away from the inexperienced hacker, right? There's no way, if you put like a former CIA analyst against a company to attack your company, they're gonna get in. There's no doubt in my mind, they're gonna find a way in, right?
Yeah.
They know all the tricks of the trade, and all somebody has to do is click one link and they're in, right? And it needs to be for 30 seconds. And then once they're in, they've created another foothold somewhere that nobody's seen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we need to be looking for those. We need to stop the initial access. The days of just put a network together and throw it in and we can work. Yeah, that was great in the 80s. You know, security was very simple in the 80s. Today, it's more complicated. Cybersecurity is the one thing that keeps me up at night. And that's why I'm talking about it today, because if I can save one company or one person from going through that hell, that's where I want to be.
Yes, yes. And so that's what you mean when you say put the apple at the top of the tree. If someone wanted to get to your company specifically and they were really talented hacker, they could get in. But only a very specialized, very experienced hacker could do that. All of the others who are just scanning and creating bots and all of that stuff, you've taken yourself out of their domain, right? They're not even, they can't get to you.
Well, if you're training your end users so they're cybersecurity aware, you're doing things like putting email banners so your end users see if an email comes from the outside, something really simple. Well, you train your users to be extra discerning to those emails that have that banner in, right? Oh, this came from the outside. So those spoofed emails of, hey, go buy 10 Google Play cards at the mall and send them to me because I got this marketing event going on, doesn't happen, right? Or click this link and get this and send it to me here, doesn't happen because these people are aware, oh, that's coming from outside the organization. I got to be extra cautious about that, especially in the construction industry. We send documents by email all the time, right? So, if you're not expecting it, don't open it. But those are the things that we need to train the end users on. Make them cybersecurity aware. Make it so that they click less. And when they do click it, if they realize they clicked it, then get a hold of the IT company right away or the IT guy right away to remediate that, to figure out what actually happened. And having the tools in the background so we can trace what actually happened when they click that link. So all of it's really important.
Okay. So I'm assuming that the subcontractors also need to have all of this in their business as well, right? Or is there anything else that subcontractors should do?
No, this is the whole point, right? So if a general contractor is bringing themselves down this path, what I'm saying is they should, as they do it, they should be bringing their subcontractors down the path, right?
Okay.
Because it's all about the security of the whole, right? Because one weak link in the thing breaks the chain, right? If we have a weak link and it breaks, then everything stops, right? The construction job stops, multiple hacks happen. You yourself as a general contractor or you yourself as a subcontractor might have subcontractors get hit. Might really affect your supply chain, right? And the hackers are all about the supply chain at the moment because they realize that's where we hurt. That's where we'll pay anything to get back on board to complete that project before it costs us hundreds of thousands of dollars in liquidated damages and supplementing fees and stuff like that.
Wow. Okay. Is there anything that, like, so when you do a prequal, right, I'm assuming that there's specific questions that you ask to get the answers that you can double check to make sure that they qualify. So what do you think that should be included in a prequal for cybersecurity?
So in the beginning, just an assessment, right? So like I said, we got to bring everybody along with it. Do the assessment, right? But I think that some next gen AI definitely needs to be a question on the prequal. Do they have foothold protection? Are they doing DNS protection? DNS protection, let me explain what that is. So I just don't, is everything on the internet has a name like www Attain technology, but that gets translated to an IP address. DNS servers do that change. And what we do is we use a special set of DNS servers that look for vulnerability. So if you go to www.church.io and they know that's a bad site, they'll tell you it's a bad site and won't let you go there. So that's really what DNS protection is. We make sure that they have DNS protection. We make sure that they have foothold protection. We make sure that all of their ports on their system, we do a penetration scan. We see what ports are open. Are these common vulnerable ports, right?
Okay.
Make sure we don't have RDP. So there's a bunch of things that we can do and that are almost, I don't want to say costless, but very low cost that we can do to get you up to halfway in the tree. And then the rest of it, we just add on by time, right? Eventually go to zero trust. We make your network resilient, but the first thing we do is we train our users and we test them and we create a cybersecurity culture. I can't express that enough because they're at 80% of the exposure, right? It's the 80-20 rule. Let's take care of the 80% first, right? And then, something else will become the 80%, but let's do the 80-20 rule.
Right, exactly. Yeah, because, as you said, 80% of the compromises happen from employees clicking links and emails.
Yep.
All right. So, so basically what I hear you saying is, correct me if I'm wrong, there's questions that you want to ask your subcontractors as a general contractor. There's questions you want to ask your subcontractor for the prequal, but then there's also things that you want to do, like scan their ports to see if you can access them, right? That your IT department, your IT support company will help you do to ensure that subcontractor is protected.
There's a fine line there, and we got to be very careful.
Okay.
There's some liabilities there. So what we really want to do is we want them to certify themselves that they have done this thing and it's been done, right? There's some fine lines about taking on liability when you scan them. Now you're certifying them, and it's not a place I think I want my customers to be. So we just need to be very careful and make sure, just like safety, companies certify themselves to make sure that their safety record is what they say that it is. If it's not on the liability of the general contractor. It's on the liability of subcontractor. We want them to certify. We want them to sign saying that, yes, I do meet these criteria. There's laws in the United States that protect companies when companies lie like that. And I think that we should put the onus on whatever company to be honest and tell us where they are. And if there comes a hack from that, then it becomes a lawyer's thing. And I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to get into that.
Right. But it is interesting that you've identified this because the cybersecurity isn't, customarily on typically on a prequal for construction. And with cybersecurity or cyber attacks so prevalent and they exploded in 2020, really you have to protect yourself. And so it's interesting that you're thinking about this right now and thinking about adding it or, really putting it out there and trying to get the awareness out that construction companies need to add this cybersecurity, section to their prequals, because if they don't, they could be,
Well, let's look at construction companies in general too, and why I think this is important for general contractors. Construction companies, by history, have been the slowest adopters of technology, right? And some of these subcontractors are still very slow adopters of technology. I just talked to a business owner the other day, and they're still working on pencil and paper, right?
Wow.
Actually, that's not a bad cybersecurity plan.
Yeah,
If they could scale that way, that wouldn't be a bad cybersecurity plan, because someone would actually need to come to your office and pull a Nixon to get that done, right? But that's not today's world, because everything's on-demand data, and those construction contractors that are on pen and paper can't scale or can't deal with the big dogs because everybody wants information now, right?
Mm-hmm.
We need to get that project done. We need to know those statuses now. And that's the world we've moved into. Not only that, but construction technology is growing, right? We're talking about massive scale in the construction industry and bringing automation and remote site work. So just the other day, I was looking at 2 different technologies, and I want to bring this out because this is another reason why we got to start talking about cybersecurity before we get all of this technology in the construction industry. Is that one of them was a bridge rebar tying bot, right? So this construction company in Pennsylvania bought this bot, and basically it's a rail system that you install on the whole bridge. And then you lay the rebar, and this bot just goes through and ties rebar to rebar all the way through the project. They didn't save any labor, like they didn't lay anybody off to get this done, but they retasked the people that would normally tie rebar into laying rebar to keep up with the bot, right? Well, now that's another technology, another exposure, right? Mm-hmm. So you get this all set up on the bridge, and now you have a very weak cybersecurity policy. And when you updated it, you introduced a virus or a malware to that system. And basically the hacker says, you're not turning this back on till you pay me, right? Now, let's say this is 3 years in of that technology, nobody ties rebar anymore. So you don't have those guys that can tie rebar really fast on the bridge construction, but now you need to bring in humans and teach them how to do it. And that's going to be another whole mess. So you really want to mature that cybersecurity model, as well as let's think about the security risk. Technology that's looked at is that they're rigging like backhoes and site equipment so that they can be remotely operated. From like an air-conditioned room in Chicago, they could be doing work in Massachusetts. And they're going to be doing site work as a service. Well, let's talk about now what happens if that gets hacked. If a hacker gets in there and then they bust open the sidewall of a bank or cause somebody to die for some reason. So the implications of adding cybersecurity technology become huge. So this is just the beginning. We're seeing all of these explosive technologies. Big companies like Hilti are getting involved, where they have a bot that goes through the building based on the plans and does all the drilling into the hi-hats on the ceiling, right? Mm-hmm. So we talk about technology. Now just imagine if a nefarious user got a hold of that, what they could do. So
yeah, it's true. Absolutely. It's so like the technology makes everything better, like speeds up productivity, saves time, saves costs, saves money. But also there's like a dark side to it. If you're not protected, it can be compromised and then really, put your business at risk.
So one of the things we need to think about is that technology as a whole and the communication of technology, it's just like a car or a piece of equipment. There's preventative maintenance, right? One of the pieces of preventive maintenance to technology is to make sure it's secure. It's just another checkup, right? You bring your car to the mechanic every 6 months to make sure you get your oil changed, to get your tires rotated, to keep that car in good health. Well, we have to do the same with technology. There is that maintenance. And, up until recently, everybody sort of ignored that maintenance because there wasn't a cost. But with Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, mm-hmm. there is a huge cost. And the hackers have dialed in on it, figured it out. And they know how to get you to give them money. They either embarrass you or cripple you. That's their whole goal, right?
Yeah, it's horrible. It really is. And it's a lot more prevalent than you would think. It seems like it's something that happens to other people or every now and again, but really it's as you said, Russia has buildings full of employees and India just trying to hack businesses in North America and Europe. Like they're just, go ahead.
We are the wealthiest country in the nation. we are the target for every other nation.
Yeah.
State-sponsored, some of these hacks are state-sponsored and some of them are by private hacking groups. And really, the big difference is that some countries turn a blind eye to the hackers if they're attacking the United States. Russia's known to do that. India is known to do that. In India, all you need to do is pay off your local police official. There'll be no action, right? And the international borders make it tougher for the United States to enforce laws. After one of the recent attacks, ReEvil was disappeared. Like all of a sudden they dropped off the face of the earth. And it's because the United States put enough pressure on that country to do something, right? To take action. But unfortunately with hacking, there isn't those cases every time. So we need to take the ball in our own hand because nobody's coming to save you or me or anybody else. It's up to us to make sure we do what we need to do to keep ourselves above that fray. And like I said, it's not that expensive. Yes, it's a cost, but it's not that expensive. And it's better than the alternative because I lay awake at night worried about a cyber hack. And if I'm laying worried, right, you should be laying awake worried. Right? Because I can see what's possible. And the thing is that you're not seeing one of the great and bad things about America is that you as a construction company or the company next door, you have privacy. So you don't have to tell somebody that you've been hacked, right? You hear about the big ones. You hear about like the pipeline and the ferry service out of the Cape Cod. You hear about all of those because they're public facing or they have a public component and it's almost impossible for them to hide it. But if Joe Papa construction next door gets hacked, you won't hear anything about it unless you're directly involved. And just because he gets hacked, every other company he does business with is involved in one way or another, right? Needs to take some due diligence and care.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the Wild West, and but you don't need to attack anybody. You just need a really great defense, right?
Well, you need to have a plan, right? That's really what I'm introducing here. I'm saying have a plan. I'm not telling you what has to be in that plan. I can advise you on what I think should be in that plan. But even if you do something, you're already moving yourself up that apple tree, right? Something's better than nothing.
Yeah, that's great advice. That's great advice. Well, Bob, this is really fascinating. I've kept you a little over time, but how can, if construction companies want to, learn more, how can they reach you, contact you, find out what they need to put into their prequals?
It's really simple. Just visit my website, www.attaintechnology.com. Send me an email, bparadise@attaintechnology.com. I'm available. Our company phone number is 401-244-5200. Choose the sales option. I will be there for you. I'll come out and talk to you for free, right? So let me make the first one on me. We'll spend an hour together. We'll talk about it. We'll see what your exposure is. I'll ask you 20 questions and I'll gauge your exposure. And that's something that I will be willing to do for you. Let me help you not be one of those people attacked. I'll give you advice and you can choose whether you want me to help you get there or not. But please, 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 please do something. Don't do anything, right? Take action. The time's now, because it's not not when, but if people are going to be attacked. So let's move you up the chain so that it's not you right now. So
exactly. You've got to protect yourself, and whatever you do, you got to make sure you're protected. So get started now. Call Bob and learn what you need to do to protect yourself. And protecting yourself now, like as Bob has talked about, it's not just your business. It extends to everybody you come in contact with. So it's kind of weird that way, but that's the nature of technology now.
Hey, Mike, I just want to take 30 seconds and apologize, because if you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and you're worried about this, I apologize, because that's not the effect that I want to have on people. I just want to bring the awareness, right?
Yeah.
Like this is our reality. This isn't even a scare tactic. This is me being honest, and really, I never want you to pay a ransom, and I don't want you to be in that position. You know, spend an hour with me, let me help you, get you beyond that. If we find something that Attain can help you with, that's fine. If not, at least I know I can sleep at night knowing I help one more person prevent them from this hell. So
Yeah, that's excellent. That's excellent. Well, thanks, Bob. Really appreciate it. Really enjoyed the conversation.
all right, thanks, Mike. Thanks everybody for attending. And
Yes, thank you.
stay secure and create that cybersecurity culture, right? That's probably the key thing: training, testing, and culture.